Now that I understand the tax benefit, the true tax benefits of it, I figure out roughly what my tax savings is going to be. And let's say I buy this asset. So this asset will save me $10,000 of an actual tax bill that I have to pay to the IRS at the end of the year. So here's my two options. I don't buy the asset and I pay $10,000 to the IRS, or I burr into the asset and I have to keep $10,000 of my money into the deal. So I'm paying a little bit more than maybe what I wanted to pay.
So let's go back to your story a little bit. You do your first flip, you make $107,000. Real estate journey start going from there.
Yeah, so I went back to college, taking 15 credit hours. I went back to valeting cars, working 50, 60 hours a week. And I went back to trying to get my next deal. And it took me a couple months to get and by the way, I reinvested every single penny back into the business. I didn't take a vacation. I didn't go out to dinner. I didn't buy a pair of sneakers. I didn't go and pop bottles. When I say I invested every single penny back into the business, every single penny went back into the business, because 100 grand, one deal doesn't change your life, right? 100 grand sounds a lot of money, especially if it's your first deal. It's going to be gone in the next couple months, right? If you go out and start splurging, you can spend 100 grand very, very quickly, right? So I knew that one deal, that 100,000 was not going to change my life long term. So I went back to doing what I did because it was one deal. I was like, is this a fluke, right? Does this thing actually work? So it took me a couple more months to get my next deal, a couple months to sell it. So made about $40,000 on that deal. So in the 4 or 5 month period, I made $150,000 in real estate. And I was, all right, this is the second deal. This works. It's not a fluke. And I had my third house in contract to buy at that time. I was like, all right, this is cool. So then I quit my job. I went to my mom. I was like, hey, Mom, you're never going to see me walk across the graduation stage. And she was like, no, I get it. My parents have been super supportive of me the entire way. I get it. I wouldn't expect anything different. Dropped out of college, went all in on real estate. And it was just kind of a slow, incline. The first year obviously was 0. Second year was 2 or 3. Third year was 7. Fourth year was 25.
So wait, let's talk about that real quick. So because I want to understand, you said year 1 was 0. So was that you were still doing the valet college stuff and you were trying to do it for a year before you got your first deal? Is that right?
Yeah. So from the day I invested into the coaching program to the day I made money was 16 months. It took me 10 months to buy the first deal and then 6 months to buy, renovate, and sell it. So it was a 16-month period of 0 income, but it was 10 months of nothing. And then I finally got that first deal.
And what do you feel makes someone, because there are people who I've heard who've gotten it within 2 months, which is insanely quick.
Agreed.
Then there are people, I feel you can tell me what you think about this, whether you feel this is the average. I feel the average is, if they're full-time doing it, is 4 to 5 months. It's usually what I hear.
Yep. I was going to say
3 to 6.
Yep.
And then 8 months, 10 months, a year. Especially you weren't doing it full-time too, that's probably what you'll say is kind of the reason. But if I start hearing a year and you've been doing full-time and you haven't gotten a deal, then there's issues. You're just not doing it right. What do you feel are the variables that can change someone from getting it to the 2-month thing or a 4-month thing versus an 8 to year-long thing?
Yeah. So the funny thing is I was putting in enough time for it to be full time, and it still took me 16 months, which technically it took 10 to get the first deal. So I guess it was less than a year. But the thing is, at the time, I learned real estate to flip houses using other people's money. At the time, I didn't know what wholesaling was. So I'm sure I passed up on a lot of deals that other people thought were amazing deals, which I could have wholesaled and made a lot of money on. But I was hey, I need to flip a house with other people's money. So I was running numbers for me. Obviously, they were conservative because I didn't want to lose money. So I think that played into it taking so long as well. So now, obviously, I know what wholesaling is. A lot of people know what wholesaling is. It's an amazing, amazing way to get into the business and make money fast because there's no risk, there's no money. You don't got to buy anything. All you do is flip paper, right? So to your answer, though, what's the difference? So I say people start in real estate in 2 ways. They either have a lot of money and not much time, or a lot of time and not much money. So if you have a lot of money and not much time, yeah, you can get a deal quick. You can throw a lot of money at it. You can hire a bunch of cold callers. You can hire a salesperson. I'm not saying you can do it profitably, but you can do a deal very quickly because you just throw money at it. Now, how I started out broke and a lot of time, the fastest way in my opinion, to get a deal is drive for dollars, door knock, and or cold call, because you're getting straight to the decision maker right away. And the reason you drive for dollars and door knock is because you're typically going after distressed houses. So if you're going after distressed property and you're immediately talking to the decision maker, that's a very fast way to get a deal, right? The problem is that is not scalable. You can maybe do 1, 5, 10 deals a year on that, but you can't do 100 deals a year, driving for dollars, you just door knocking, right? There's just not enough
Right.
opportunity that way. So at some point you have to scale, have a team, do bigger marketing. But by far the easiest, in my opinion, the easiest, fastest way to get into a deal is drive for dollars, door knock if you got the courage to. If not, skip trace and cold call those people and try to get your first deal under their belt. If you want to flip it like I did and you have access to capital, that's great, right? Like I could have probably wholesaled that house, made 20, 30 grand and, and made great money instead of 100 grand. But I just learned to flip houses using other people's money. So that's what I was going to do. So if you have access to capital, maybe think about flipping it. But if not, wholesale it, make some money and move on to the next.
I like it. So then so you start with that course, you're very stuck on the flipping other people's money. How do you start learning about these other things, wholesaling, commercial, whatever it is?
Yeah, so I was flipping houses using other people's money. And I bought the first duplex way before, and I got into real estate with the idea of passive residual income. Like that sounded great. Money continuously without working. But then the problem is I got caught flipping houses, right? Because when you flip houses or wholesale, you make a lot of money very quickly, right? And it's addicting, right? You chase this endless number. I remember the first time I made 100 grand in a month. Like that was the goal, 100,000 in a month. I was like, this would be incredible. And then I hit it. And then I hit it again and again. And I was like, all right, 200 a month. And then I hit it and again and again. And then I was like 300 a month. And then I hit it and again. And I was like, you can literally chase this number forever, right? Literally for the rest of your life, you can chase a number because it will never stop. And I woke up 5 years into the business, what I say, still on a hamster wheel, flipping houses, wholesaling houses, building new construction, making money today. Yeah, I bought some rentals, maybe 15 rentals or something over that 5-year stretch, but flipped, wholesaled, and new constructed hundreds of houses. And I woke up one day and I had a friend. We started real estate at the same time. We was actually in the same realtor class. We both got our license to start. And when he started out buying houses and essentially burning them, keeping them as long-term rental properties. And when I started out flipping houses using other people's money, right? So my business was mainly flipping with a little bit of rentals. His business was mainly rentals with a little bit of flipping. And early on in our careers, I had a lot more money than he did, right? Because I was making money today. I was making 20, 40, 60, $80,000 a house. He was making $100 a month. So I had a lot more money. And then I woke up this day, 5 years into the game, and he was one of the best men in my wedding as well. So we talk all the time. And I called him, yo, bro, what's going on? Talk to me. He's like, hey man, I just refied some houses. I was like, all right, cool. What is that? What were the numbers on it? And I forget the exact numbers, but he was like, I just refied. He had 100 and some at the time. So small portion of his portfolio. I refied 30 of them. I paid off 10 of them. So immediately there's $10,000 a month in passive residual income just off of that one thing, right? And he said, I re-leveraged the other 20. So that's probably another couple $1,000s a month. So just that alone, he just created $10,000 to $15,000 a month for the rest of his life, minimum. I was like, all right, that sounds great. He's like, and I pulled out $1 million tax-free on top of that. I was, huh? Because $1 million tax-free is very different than $1 million in income, right? It's really $1.5 million because you're going to pay a third of it in taxes. So you have to make $1.5 million to net $1 million. So he pulled out $1 million tax-free. At that time, I've never made $1 million in my career in a year. I've never made $1 million. I was like, come again? And he broke it down to me again. I was like, all right. The next day, I went into my office and I inverted the business. We were 90% flips, 10% rentals. The next day, we went to 90% rentals, 10% flips. Because I realized I was on a hamster wheel of life. I was chasing the next deal and the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. And I was 5 years into this and I was doing the same exact thing I was doing 5 years prior. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So that about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago is when that, changed. And I started buying basically all rental properties. So we flip a little bit. If it doesn't cash flow, we'll flip it. But if it cash flows today, we're 100% keeping it as a rental property every single time. So over the years, it's kind of grown. It was flipping houses. Then I saw a new construction development opportunity. So I went through and bought a ton of lots at $5,000, $10,000 a pop. I was the first one to build new construction, made $100,000. I built 3 off rip to make the market. Didn't know if it was going to work or not. Made $100,000 net plus on each of those. And then I already had I already had the inventory. So kept building, then just started flipping lots because they went up so much in value. And then that led me to buying a bunch of rental properties.
I love it. I love the story. I mean, I'm in your 5-year phase right now. I'm 3
Yeah.
years into the business.
Yeah.
So I love wholesaling houses. That's mainly what I do. I've flipped a few and I own a few rentals, right? But yeah, I get it, man. The tax-free part is the crazy part with owning real estate. When you start learning about depreciation, getting debt money instead of income money. So then wait a minute, all of that money was for free. So that's
Yep.
straight to me. Right. So I'm starting to get more into owning rentals and going into multifamily is my main goal right now. I have the scale of that more.
Yep.
But no, I get it. I'm just saying I see what I'm starting to make that transition myself where it's like I think I'll own a wholesaling business and then also when it's those good ones I'm going to take them, right, and keep them.
So two points I want to make. I'm going to tell you to remind me because I might forget the second one. But one is burring and doing the tax on it, and then the other one, is what I just said is, hey, Austin, that sounds great, but I need to make money to live on, right?
Right.
So when I initially made that transfer, I couldn't go 100% rentals because I still had an operation. We were essentially running a wholesale business at the time. I was just the buyer. I bought 90% of the deals and then we sold wholesaled the other ones. So I still had marketing. I still had a sales team. I still had all that stuff. So I couldn't just stop that and not have any income because I had people to pay. So what I did is I figured out, and this is what anybody can do, right? As I figured out my monthly expenses. And let's say, it was $30,000 a month to pay my team, to pay rent, to pay marketing. And this is the key, and paying yourself a comfortable salary, right? I'm not talking about going and balling out, right? But something comfortably so you don't have to, penny pinch, but you don't got to fly first class everywhere at this time, right? So figure out what that monthly expense is. Let's call it $30,000 a month, right? And then you want to make a profit, obviously, right? So add another $10,000 or $20,000 a month to that. If you add 20, now you're at 50,000 a month. You'll make $250,000 net profit after paying everybody. So 50 grand is the number. So go out there and flip and wholesale and make 50 grand, right? If that's 1 deal or 5 deals a month, go make your $50,000. But then everything after that, then keep those as rental properties. Problem that I did is I hit that number and then kept hitting the number and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Instead of doing, wholesaling and flipping 10 houses a month, I could have done 4 and then kept 6 rental properties a month on top of that, right? So that's the only thing I would have done slightly different, but that's an actual implementation that somebody can do to get off the hamster wheel and start actually building wealth through the ownership of rental properties. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is when you really understand the game of taxes, doing what I just said makes more sense, right? So I don't have numbers in front of me, but just for an example, let's say, a house you're buying for 100 grand and it's worth 200, right? And it needs $20,000 of work. And you could probably, if you're wholesaling that deal, you could probably wholesale it and make a $30,000 fee, right? So the cost, purchase and rehab is 120. You can probably wholesale it to be all in at 150. It's worth 200. So you can make a $30,000 assignment fee today, right? So you take the $30,000, not you, but anybody listening to this, takes the $30,000, moves on. Great. 30 grand is amazing, right? Like it's a phenomenal feeling when you cash $30,000 in the bank account. But after taxes, it's going to be 20,000, right? So you're really only taking home $20,000. So look at it this way. Let's say that same $100,000 deal that you could have wholesaled and made 30 grand. Let's say you buy it now for 100 and put 20 into it yourself. So it's $120,000 cost, right? Add fees, add interest. Let's say you're all in for 130, right? Let's say 135. So you're all in for $135,000 on this deal. You go to the bank, you cash out 75% of 200. So you take out 150, you're in for 135. So you pull out $15,000 tax-free. And people don't want to do that because they're making $30,000 in profit. But again, after taxes, you're only making 20. So you can take the assignment fee and make $20,000 net, or you can keep it as a rental and make 15, essentially the same amount of money, and own the asset long-term to continue to build wealth. So when you really understand the real numbers behind, and obviously that's an example, that's a perfect scenario. So obviously numbers change. But when you really understand the tax game on the backside, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And sometimes you can actually keep the asset and basically make the same amount of money to your bottom line.
I love it. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I'm gonna defend wholesaling real quick,
Uh-huh.
just real quick with the wholesaling versus the owning. And it's not even necessarily wholesaling versus owning. I think it all depends on the state and where you do it too. Because I
For sure.
wholesale in California,
Oh, yeah.
right? And
No.
I also so the numbers are never gonna cash flow, right?
Yep.
To Colorado, there's some more. I've just started opening up in Colorado. I've been owning more rentals here,
Yeah.
but I want to ask you, let's say, even for any market, this is the question, right? Because this is how I think about it. And I want you to challenge it because you obviously figured it out. Property management is a whole nother business,
For
right?
sure.
It's not like you just get the house and then it magically spits out money every month. There's toilets, there's tenants, and all of stuff like that. How do you feel when you're ready to deal with another business? Because owning rentals is another business, right? Like, I guess, how do you feel when you're ready to start another business? Because I consider owning rentals another business, and it's a good business to be in, right? And how do you operate that? Do you have any partners or anything like that? And yeah, how would you answer those questions for us?
That's a phenomenal point. I would never own in Cali, New York, South Florida. One, the state laws you got to be cautious of, which is Cali and New York. And then cash flow is Florida because the prices are too high. So, yes, there's definitely certain states that luckily I was in Ohio. That's where I was born and raised. And it's a great place to own rentals. But that definitely plays a part for sure. And then also cash flow. For me, it has to cash flow positively. I'll never buy an asset that negatively cash flows because the only reason an individual or a business goes bankrupt is from lack of cash flow. So those are two great points that you made there. But as far as when to make that pivot, so even to today, I have third-party property management that manages my rental properties, and people ask me all the time, they're like, "Man, you trust them? They're actually doing good for you." And for me, I'm not living on my rental income today. So I don't, to this day, I've never personally withdrawn money from that bank account ever. Right. And I've owned a lot of properties for a long time. And I've never done it because I don't need the income. Right. I have other businesses. I still flip some houses. I have other businesses going that makes me money still as well. So is my property management company maximizing the returns? No. I know they're not going to treat the asset like I do. We just had one that took 3 months to turn the property over. So am I maximizing every single penny? Definitely not, right? Am I at least breaking even or making some money? Yes, right? So for me, it's not another business because I don't manage it, which gives me the time to go and continue to build businesses that give me the cash flow. So to me, the rental property is a long-term wealth play. But literally in the last week, this is funny, we're having this conversation now. I've been highly, highly, highly thinking about, maybe switching managers or bringing it in house. But I don't want to bring it in house because you said it's a whole nother business you have to manage. And then we'll just hire a manager. I'm like, yeah, but then I got to manage the person, right? And that is my responsibility. So the short answer to your question is I have used third-party management. I haven't brought it in house yet, but I think inevitably to manage it the right way and to maximize the return, at some point you have to bring it in house or you have to have a partner that operates a property management company.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm very glad you at least said, because at least you said that it's a long-term wealth play, because that's what I truly feel rentals are. I feel people live off those rental incomes right when they buy it. And bro, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
One of my rentals is in Georgia. It was just a really good sub two deal. And the tenants trashed the place and I had to put in $10,000 worth of work. And that was all
Like
my cash
10
flow
years
from
of
that.
cash flow.
Yeah, that was everything, right?
Yeah.
I'm lucky that this thing appreciated because we had such a good market in the past 3 years. But gosh darn it, that cash flow just went to rehabbing this place, right?
Yeah.
For me, and this is just my opinion, you can tell me what you think of it, yes or no. I think the main reason for owning rentals isn't really cash flow as much. You do it so that when all of that stuff happens, you're going bankrupt. I feel it's the depreciation, which I'll have you explain that to people what depreciation is, and being able to refi and take out money. It's basically the tax benefits to me is what makes it so worth it. And the leverage of it too is pretty cool for how much money you have to put in to a property.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I don't know. For me, depreciation, which by the way, I'll let you explain it. What is depreciation for people, just so they know? What are the tax benefits of owning real estate? Because I think those are the main reasons you should own real estate versus other tax assets, not necessarily cash flow.
For sure. So there's four ways to make money on real estate: cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, and tenant mortgage buy down. Most people think cash flow is at the top. To me, cash flow is at the bottom, right? It's great to be there, but I'm not again, I told you, I've never taken a penny out of these properties ever, right? I only use the money to reinvest into more assets. So I agree with you. Cash flows is at the bottom for me. But I'm 30, right? I started buying these when I bought my first one at 20. So I know when I'm, 40, 50 years old, the cash flow is going to be there because the debt's going to stay the same. And then the interest, the rent is going to grow over time. So the margin will get there in the future, not today, right? At least 5 years, and then it might see some cash flow. So we're definitely on the same page with that. But the main reason, like you said, is one, the appreciation. Properties go up in value over time. So you make money, you build equity without really doing anything. And then two is the tax benefits. So there's different ways to set up structures with depreciation. But let's say you buy a $100,000 house, right? And you can typically depreciate those over 27 and a half years. So here, I'll get the actual numbers so people don't quote me later on. So you take 100,000 and you divide that by 27 and a half. So you can write off $3,636 every year going forward. So let's say after all expenses, you net $3,000 in actual profit in your pocket. On paper, you can depreciate $3,636 every year for the next 27 and a half years. So even though you have $3,000 in your pocket, on paper, you lost $636. So you don't pay any taxes on that. So that's the beautiful part about the cash flow, because you might make a couple grand in cash flow a year, and then you can offset that income. But the really powerful thing is if you're a quote unquote full-time real estate investor, Google it if you're curious if you are, but the IRS, you got to work a certain amount of hours in real estate to be a full-time real estate investor. But what I can do is I can depreciate the assets and offset my active other businesses. So for what that means is on that $100,000 house, we'll do, maybe not on a $100,000 house, but on a big asset, you'll do a cost segregation study. So you'll spend money up front. And then instead of taking, that amount every year over the next 27 and a half years, there's a huge portion year one that you'll be able to write off. So maybe you'll be able to write off $20,000, $25,000 year one on that $100,000 asset. So if I get a $20,000 write-off year one, it's essentially the equivalent of saving me $7,000 in taxes, right? So how I used to buy real estate is the BRRRR method: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. And I always wanted to be in for a net zero. I wanted to refi and not have any money into the deal, ideally get money back, but ideally a break even. I'm all in for 150. The bank gives me back 150. I pay off my debt and I'm good. That's how I used to buy rentals. Now that I understand the tax benefit, the true tax benefits of it, I figure out roughly what my tax savings is going to be. And let's say I buy this asset. So this asset will save me $10,000 of an actual tax bill that I have to pay to the IRS at the end of the year. So here's my two options. I don't buy the asset and I pay $10,000 to the IRS, or I BRRRR into the asset and I have to keep $10,000 of my money into the deal. So I'm paying a little bit more than maybe what I wanted to pay, but the $10,000 is still gone. It's into the asset, but now I own the asset and I don't have to pay the $10,000 to the IRS. So the two options is pay 10 grand to the IRS, put 10 grand into a house that I'm going to build wealth with. The answer is simple for me. So once I realized that, I went out and I'm buying a lot more real estate to offset my taxes, because those are the two options. I'd rather own the real estate than write the check to the government.
I love it. Awesome, man. So we're reaching the end of the podcast. So I always end this with one question, which is, if you, Austin, could go back to yourself 9 years ago, right when you were starting out in real estate, what would you tell yourself then, knowing everything that you know now?
Man, that's a very loaded question. A couple things. One, remove all fear. Because again, real estate is not an if game, it's a win game. So, I talked about that process of me becoming more confident, and that's what, blew me up. Do that day one, right? Get rid of the if. Hey, what if this doesn't work? What if I lose money? What if I go bankrupt? All these negative things, get rid of that stuff, because real estate works. And I promise you, if you have no fear, you'll be way more successful than a lot of people out there. If I had the confidence I had now, day one, it'd be night and day. And for you too, it'd be night and day different, right? So number
Yeah.
one is get rid of all fear. And number two, if instead of doing 5 years of flipping forever, not maybe, kept a few rentals along the way. So, maybe at 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 10 deals or something, kept one of them as a rental property. So early on, you have to make money, you have to wholesale, you have to flip, you have to build a base. But then after you have that, try to take down some rental properties to build some wealth along the way.
I love it, my man. So where are you doing deals? What would you want from my community? We can drop your socials, we can drop everything. This is the plug it time. What do we got? I heard you had a coaching program. What should we plug right now?
Yeah, so all the social media is at Austin Rutherford. Would love to connect with you. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. If you want to grab a copy of my book, it's up there. If you go to howtogetfreehouses.com, howtogetfreehouses.com, it's basically how to build wealth using other people's money. And like I said, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I respond to everybody on there, so I'd love to connect.
What are your markets? Where are you buying houses?
Yeah. So Columbus, Ohio, and I think we're going into Cincinnati, Ohio. So anything in Ohio, if you get it, send it to me. We're buying deals every week. So we'd love to do some deals together.
I love it, my man. Awesome. So cool. Love it. You're an amazing guest. He's a really chill guy. Guys, I DM'd him. He's like, yeah, I'll go do your podcast. So yeah, just DM him. He's a great guy, especially if you're doing deals in Ohio. Definitely get the book. Follow him on Instagram and YouTube. And then, yeah, man, any last words before I end this?
No, man. Appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, for everyone listening, get rid of the fear. It works. It's not rocket science.
That's the whole point of the podcast. All right. Thank you, my man. This was Skorch the Fears. We'll be back Thursday, 6 p.m. MST next week. I appreciate you guys so much. Let's freaking go.